Hey everyone, I'm Will and thank you for joining me in another video. This one here is all about the whole photography workflow, beginning out in the field, the thought process, composition, settings, and then coming back and finally processing and saving the images. It's my hope that whether you are a complete beginner or maybe you've been shooting some time, that this could provide you with a bit of inspiration and some insights into the creative process, and hopefully it just frees you up a little bit if you've potentially hit a plateau, or maybe you're getting caught up on a few of the creative or technical aspects of landscape photography. All right, we're going to head out into the field now. It looks like there is a beautiful sunset on the way, so let's go see what we can do. Okay, first and foremost, having a location in mind, having a bit of a game plan, that's quite critical. Now, a lot of my photography is spontaneous, but that's just when you're putting yourself in a photographic area in the right conditions. But you know, when you're starting out especially and it's sunrise or sunset photography, you got to have a location in mind. So this afternoon, we've just headed down the lake here and I've timed this. We're about 20 minutes from the sunset. Now, at this latitude, the light is already really golden. There's color in the cloud, and that's going to last for another half an hour at least. No urgency. Depending on where you live, the color may fade a lot faster. Anyway, once I get to the location, first and foremost, I'm not really thinking about photography per se. I'm more being an observer and just looking at the environment and seeing what catches my eye. What is it that's interesting to me? What is it that looks beautiful? You know, for example, here I've just noticed the channel of water and those reflections in there, which that's often not in this area. It's normally where the river flows out of, but it's changed course recently. So be an observer, just enjoy the place. If you're thinking about photography straight away, you can maybe get a little bit too caught up in that and miss the opportunities that are there because you're so worried about getting a great photograph. So just enjoy the place, slow yourself down. And that's what I'm doing now. And look, definitely the reflections here are catching my eye. Question number one you need to ask yourself, what's the main subject? What is this photograph all about? Is it a tree? Is it a mountain? So on and so forth. So right here this afternoon, really it's the Murchison Mountains, that range back there. It's a predominant range. They've got the snow on them. They stand out the most. That's what I want to really kind of lead the eye to. Once you establish what the main subject is, well, then it's a question of asking, how do I do justice to that subject matter? And what I mean by that is I'm now referring to composition. Does that subject need a wide approach to incorporate a lot of the surrounding environment? Is it a telephoto scene? You know, when I look north up the lake here, there's a good 400 mil shot there. That's quite beautiful. When I'm looking at this perspective and those mountains and the reflection in the sky, I'm thinking it needs to be a little bit wider. So that first of all determines what lens you might use, and then you can start to think about composition. So when it comes to composition, I generally like to build up layers. And what I mean by layers is I mean detail for the viewer, beginning near and progressively getting further away. That's how you really create a three-dimensional look to images instead of it just looking so flat. So one of the common things you might see and do in visual art, landscape paintings, landscape photography is images that have a foreground, a midground and a background, multiple layers there. So in this case, we've got some beautiful stones, the reflection, more stones, lake, and then rolling onto the hills and mountains. So multiple layers of detail. So that would be quite wide. Now, maybe I don't get those stones and I zoom a little bit tighter. You could still get the reflection stones, so on and so forth. So I have quite a few options here to work with. I just want to make sure I've got the right balance. I don't want to be so wide that the mountains are tiny, but I want to be wide enough to pick up those layers and pick up some of that beautiful sky. I find that composition first with my eyes, but then I need to really get the lens out and look through the lens. So I've got a 16 to 35 on here. At the moment I'm experimenting, I'm just looking at 28 mil. I think it's going to be somewhere around the 20 to 28 mark. Now it's time to think about settings, and when it comes to settings, we want the most optimal result. Nice clean image so we have high resolution details in it. Typically I want a low ISO. I'm going to be 100 today. If I have a big depth of field, do I have something near to me as well as something far away? That's a question I ask myself. If I do have something near to me, which I do in this case, I need to close the f-stop down a little bit to get that depth of field. I like to be sharp all the way through the frame. So I'm going to close the f-stop down What f-stop do you need? Well, it just depends. Depends on your proximity to that first subject matter, the stones in this case. Depends on your focal length as well. So there's a few factors. Anywhere from f8 right through to f22 potentially. It just depends. You might even need to focus stack. The last thing I do is do the shutter speed. If the shutter speed's not important, I'm not trying to streak the water, which I won't be today because it's a reflection, then I don't really care what it is as long as it's not too slow because I'm handheld, and it won't be too slow because we've got lots of light at the moment. I use a histogram as my guide when it comes to that. So if we roughly look at a composition here for argument's sake, we've got there's a nice progression here of stones flowing through to that background. 20mm has really given me a nice run of stones flowing through to the background. And I might go portrait in this particular spot. Oh, so 100 f11, looking at my histogram, and that ends up being, I'm on about 1/30, so a 1/30th of a second. After I take the image, I then zoom in, and I'm zooming in on the back here, and all I'm checking is, first of all, sharpness. Am I sharp down the bottom, and am I sharp in the back? Have I got that depth of field? In this case, I do. And then lucky last, if I have any doubts, I check the histogram, and I'm shooting for the highlights. I just don't want those highlights to blow out, and in this case, the highlights are fine. Now, if all of that has met the requirements, it's sharp, the histogram's good, I like the composition, the next part of my workflow is to find another composition. There's no point just sitting there shooting that same frame over and over. Now, if the sky gets better, which it will do this afternoon, because we have a beautiful clearing on the horizon, we've got cloud there catching the light. And as the sun gets lower, it's just going to really amplify that color in the cloud. So if it gets better, and I really like that comp, I can come back to that. I'm not wandering too far away. So I encourage you though to move around, okay? Mix it up. Don't just shoot the same frame over and over. So now I'm just going to walk along, repeat that whole workflow, and pick up a variety of different frames, different compositions. It's all going to be similar to what I just explained. Look at that sky. That is just incredible. If you're enjoying the moment, the place, it'll translate through the photography. Remember, it's about the experience. If you're having a good experience, it's going to show in the photograph. You got to have fun. It's not serious, guys. Look at that leading line. It's a little bit too straightforward, maybe. Very impressive reflection, though. So I just, as the sun's going down, the light's dropping off, my shutter speed just slowly comes down to let the light in. I like to lead the eye to the light, so I'm often aligning compositions that have darker edges and then light in the background when I'm trying to lead the eye. We're drawn to light. Have that light where the subject is. Man, that's just beautiful. Now I'm mixing it up and getting really close to this branch, just for something different here. You don't have to decide in the field which is the shot, okay? You just shoot, be in a flow state, just enjoy the process. Don't think too much. Overthinking will probably make you ruin the shot. Just shoot. It's not film. There's no limit here, unless you've got a small memory card, but just enjoy it all. Shoot away. When you get home, that's when you decide, all right, which is the shot, which is the one. You got to get home and let the emotion fade before you can really establish which is the one you're going to work on. And before you leave the location, make sure you just stop and take it in. Camera down, just enjoy the moment. Trust me, that's what you'll come to cherish the most. All right, we'll head back and I'll show you the workflow now for getting the files onto the computer, processed and saved. All right, let's talk about the rest of the workflow. We obviously need to get our files off our memory card. And then let's talk about saving, post-processing and everything like that. First thing I really suggest is getting a portable hard drive. And this is where you're going to store all of your images, and it's what you'll work from as well. So you have everything saved on there and then you work from it. That way you're not going to clog up your system and slow it down too much. So I've connected my portable hard drive. And now I'm just going to put in the SD card from the camera, and let's talk about how I kind of save the files first and foremost. With my hard drive plugged in, this is my hard drive here, and I manually on my hard drive create these folders. So I've got one called drafts, the other one's called raw. So in the raw folder, I just make the years and then months, and then inside the month, I'll right click, make a new folder. So we'll just call this one Sunset Te Anau, for example, okay? And I'll put that there. So I just manually make these. It's primitive, but it works nice and easy. You're in full control. Now, I've put the SD card into the laptop. What I do to view the raw files, if we try to view the files in the Mac or in your PC, the layout is not ideal and it can load very slow. I use Adobe Bridge. So if you are paying for the Adobe photography plan, Bridge is a part of it. And what Bridge is, it's a file viewer. So I'm in Bridge now. It's not an editor, it's just a way to view files on your computer or on an external drive. So for example, there's my drive. Here's the SD card from our shoot. So when I double click that and open up the raw folder. So now I'm viewing the raw files and you can see how many were taken on that afternoon. So lots there, progressing all the way through. If I'm in a rush, what I would do is go to the first one, which is here, and then scroll down to the last one of that shoot, somewhere around here, for example. I'll hold shift and click, and now it's grabbed all of them. And then I'll drag all of those over into my folder on my hard drive. So in this case, it'll be that sunset folder. If I open that up and just sit the window here, I can literally drag them across. If I'm not in a rush, why save all of them if I don't think I need all of them? So you could, if you had the time, strategically go through, find the ones you want, and then drag them in. So for now, for the sake of the lesson, we're not going to save all of them. Why don't we just grab a random one, this one here, and I'm just going to click, drag that over and drop it in. So now you've basically gone from the SD to the portable hard drive, nice and secure. Now personally, it's good to have stuff on a hard drive, but what if the hard drive fails? What if you drop it? What if someone breaks into your house? You know, whatever it is, you kind of got to think of the worst case scenario. You'll either want to have a second one to back that one up. So I don't really think it's practical to be having a duplicate drive. I think you might want to look into having some kind of cloud storage. So in my case, I use Dropbox. I have Dropbox sync everything from that drive up into the cloud. So it's all a bit of a fail-safe system. Backblaze is another one, Google Drive, you name it. Pick the program that you like. They're all very similar. It kind of comes down to the price and how much storage you need and everything like that. But Dropbox that I'm using, it syncs that drive automatically, so I don't have to think about it. I can kind of rest assured that it's all saved and it's up there. That's the saving side of things. So let's talk about the post-processing. When it comes time to process, I'm still in Bridge, but this time I'm going to navigate to the hard drive, open up to whatever I want to work on. In this case, it's going to be August, and we will do the sunset at Te Anau. Keep in mind, I've just grabbed a random raw file. I don't know if this one is the shot from the actual shoot, but anyway, what I do now is I double click and Bridge will open up Camera Raw, which is a raw file editor, and it's made by Adobe. By default, mine kind of opens up Photoshop first, and then Photoshop opens up Camera Raw, which is right here. Now, you might be a Lightroom user, or you've heard of Lightroom. Camera Raw is almost identical to Lightroom. Personally, I just like using Camera Raw along with Bridge, and then any unusual stuff like maybe a bit of warping or exposure blending or something like that, I'll just do that in the main part of Photoshop. So here we are in Camera Raw, or ACR, Adobe Camera Raw. So obviously I'm not going to do a full workflow now with the processing because I cover that in many other videos, and if you are interested in learning very effective processing that is easy, just check out the link below for my processing masterclass. But anyway, let's do a very brief edit. I'll throw a landscape profile. We're going to brighten it up a little bit. We'll raise the shadows somewhat, bring the highlights down. This one would actually work really well as a panorama for argument's sake. Not that I often do panos, but something like that. And I think that horizon needs to be straightened up. So let's say you've done that. There we go. And I'd probably do a very brief local adjustment, maybe darken the top part of the sky. And that will help bring the eye down into the center of the frame, which I'm going to lift the shadows and blacks to create a sense of depth. Now, funny enough, it looks like I've grabbed one that has a bit of a flare there on the lens. But anyway, we'll ignore that for now. So very quick edit. Let's say we did something like this, before and after, okay? What do I do now? Well, it's time to save the file. Now, what I really recommend is, one, even when it comes to processing, I don't suggest looking at the raw files straight after the shoot. Sometimes that can be a bit deflating, especially if you've had a really good time out in the field. It's pretty hard for the raw files to live up to that experience, so try to give it a couple of days if you can. Let that emotion fade a little bit, and then you can review the images more objectively. From this point here, when I do an initial edit, let's say this was the initial edit, I'd like to save this as a draft, what I call letting it marinate, okay? Let's just let it sit so you can come back later with fresh eyes, and I'm almost guarantee you'll make some further adjustments. Pretty hard to nail the edit in one sitting. Personally then, I'd save as a draft, and if I just push done now, that is saving it already. So ACR will instantly create a memory of that edit. You can see the thumbnail has that icon. In the source folder back on that hard drive, if we go back to that, there is this XMP file there now. So when you push done, it creates that XMP. It's a memory of the edit. So whenever we go back to that raw, we open it up and bang, it remembers everything. That's a great way to do an initial save. Let it marinate. If you determine that this is something now that you want to share with the world and it's part of your portfolio, I like to save that as a whole new unique file, no longer just being the raw file. So I like to do a PSD, a Photoshop document, that is a high-res, uncompressed file. You can do a TIFF as well. TIFF, same thing, high-res, uncompressed, and Lightroom will read the TIFF files. What I do is I push the export button up the top here, and basically we say where we want to save it, the name we want to save it as, the extension. So this is where, like I said, I would do a PSD. Otherwise, you could look at doing a TIFF file as well, just above it there. And then you save it, okay? The only thing is I would not resize it to anything. You want it to be full res uncompressed. So that's the first thing I do. That is now what I'd put in my draft folder back on that portable hard drive. So I would save it to the drafts, and you'll see if we navigate to my draft folder, it'll be full of PSD files. So we'll just click on the portable hard drive, drafts, there's all these PSDs. So these are currently images that I'm working on, but I haven't published them or released them anywhere yet. The last part is then, what if we want to put it on the web? Well, we just reopen the PSD file. Obviously, I didn't actually save that one as a PSD. In this case, why don't we grab one of these ones? I'm going to open up this Milford Sound Sunset. It's a PSD, so it goes into this part of Photoshop here. Now what I'm going to do is export it to web. File, export, save for web. And the key now is, for the web, we want to shrink it down and we want it to be a JPEG. We don't want it to be a high-res JPEG though. We need to shrink down the resolution. So at the top here, I select JPEG, quality maximum, but the key now is resizing the image on the longest edge, and then it will do the shortest edge by default. The longest here is the height, so I highlight it, the magic number, 1500 pixels. If we save that as 1500 now, it's going to look good on screens, but if you try and blow it up, it's just not going to have enough detail in it. These ones I save then to my laptop because they're JPEG, they're low resolution, they don't take up too much space. Mine all go to a folder that I've called low res. So if I open up my low res folder, which is on the desktop, here they all are, and you can put these in categories, locations, whatever you want to do. I'll totally leave that up to you. And all of these are JPEGs, 1500 longest edge, look good on the screen, and you can email that to yourself, you can airdrop it, whatever you want to do, then you've got it on your phone as well. Now, if we open up that RAW file again, you can also export from here to a JPEG too. We say file extension JPEG, quality maximum, and then down the bottom here, resize to fit on the longest edge, 1500. You can put that in your low res folder. So you can see how you can just do everything straight from ACR, Adobe Camera Raw as well. When it comes to printing, you will need to make some adjustments to the file, mainly brightening up those shadows. I have other videos covering printing, keeping in mind I do outsource my printing. I don't do it myself from home, so it's not something I go too in depth with, but otherwise just check out this video here on a little overview of the typical adjustments that I would make to a file before I send it off to be printed. So I hope this video maybe helps give you a bit of an overview on the workflow and how I suggest you might want to think about your photography. Now, obviously we can go into a far greater detail when it comes to planning, chasing weather, being spontaneous, so on and so forth. Like I said, it's absolutely limitless, and that's the fun part. So it's all up to you and your creativity. What do you enjoy? What is the subject matter that you like photographing? And then you can get out there and try and do it. Look at the results, learn from your mistakes, rinse and repeat. It's really fun, and it's a great way to see the world. As photographers, I just feel like we get this cheat code in life where we just find beauty in the most simplest of things, and being able to see beauty in things really brings you a sense of satisfaction and peace as well. Anyway, that's enough talking. Thank you for checking out the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them below. Leave a thumbs up if you did enjoy the video. Otherwise, I hope to see you in a video soon. Cheers.